"Step aside, Mom." I tightened my grip on the white lilies, but Diane Carter planted herself across the church entrance like she had been waiting for me. "You have no place here," she said. Behind her, relatives moved quietly through the lobby, dressed in black. Some glanced toward us, others immediately looked away. "This is Grandma's memorial," I said. "I came to say goodbye." Mom's face hardened. "This is for family." The words landed harder than I expected. For the last 2 years, I had driven Grandma Eleanor to appointments, cooked her meals, organized her medications, and stayed beside her through the worst nights of hospice care. But now my own mother was telling me I didn't belong. I looked past her at my father. "Dad?" Richard stood near the guest book with both hands folded in front of him. His eyes met mine for half a second before dropping to the floor. He said nothing. Mom reached for the church door. "You need to leave before you cause a scene." I could have argued. I could have reminded everyone standing there that most of them had visited Grandma twice a year, while I had rearranged my entire life around her care. Instead, I placed the lilies beside the entrance. "Please make sure those go near her photograph." Mom gave no answer. Then she stepped inside and shut the door in my face. For several seconds, I stood alone beneath the stone archway, listening to muffled voices on the other side. My cousin Melissa passed a narrow window near the door. She saw me, froze, and quickly turned away. That was when the humiliation began to feel planned. I walked back to my car without knocking again. As I drove away, memories followed me through every intersection. Grandma squeezing my hand during chemotherapy, apologizing whenever I missed work for her appointments, whispering that I was the only person who never made her feel like a burden. My parents had rarely visited unless there were papers to discuss or questions about the house. Still, I had never expected them to erase me from her final goodbye. 2 days later, I entered the office of Grandma's attorney and found my parents seated at the conference table. Mom looked at me as if my presence offended her. Mr. Lawson opened a thick folder. After reading several smaller bequests, he paused and adjusted his glasses. "The residence at 214 Hawthorne Lane, owned free and clear by Eleanor Carter, shall pass in its entirety to..." His eyes lifted toward me. "Natalie Carter." The room went completely silent. Mom's chair scraped sharply against the floor. "That's impossible." Mr. Lawson kept one hand on the open will. "It is not a mistake, Mrs. Carter." Dad leaned forward. "There has to be some misunderstanding. Eleanor always said the house would stay with the family." "It is staying with the family," Mr. Lawson replied. "It is going to Natalie." Mom turned toward me so quickly that I barely had time to process what I had heard. "What did you make her sign?" "I didn't make her sign anything." "You were alone with her constantly," she snapped. "You handled her appointments. You managed her medication. You knew exactly how vulnerable she was." The accusation stunned me more than the inheritance. I had expected Grandma to leave me her recipe box, maybe the old photo albums she kept in the hallway cabinet. I had never asked about the house, not once. I didn't even know she changed the will. Mom gave a bitter laugh. "Of course you didn't." Mr. Lawson closed the folder halfway. "Mrs. Carter revised her estate plan 11 months ago. She was evaluated by her physician before signing, and 2 independent witnesses were present." Dad's face tightened. Mom did not look surprised by the date. She looked nervous. Her eyes kept shifting toward a sealed envelope resting beside Mr. Lawson's legal pad. It had Grandma's handwriting across the front, but from where I sat, I couldn't read the words. "What is that?" Mom asked. Mr. Lawson placed his hand over it. "An additional instruction from Eleanor." "Then read it." "Not today." Mom slammed her palm against the table. "You're giving that house back to this family," she said, staring directly at me. For the first time, I noticed that Dad was not protesting her demand. He was waiting for my answer. Before I could give one, Mr. Lawson slid the envelope into his briefcase. "There is one additional instruction Mrs. Carter wanted delivered," he said quietly, "but not until tomorrow." I barely slept that night. By sunrise, my phone had become a constant stream of vibrations. "Melissa. Please tell me this isn't true. Uncle Stephen. Your mother says you're taking the house from everyone. Aunt Karen. Natalie, don't let money destroy this family. I stared at the messages in disbelief. Less than 24 hours earlier, no one had questioned Grandma's will. Now I was suddenly the selfish granddaughter stealing the family's legacy. I called Melissa. What exactly is Mom telling everyone? Melissa hesitated. She's saying Grandma was confused and that you convinced her to rewrite everything while she was sick. The words made my stomach turn. Melissa, you know that's not true. I know, she said softly. But she's been calling everyone since yesterday. Most of them have only heard her version. By lunchtime, the family group chat had exploded. The right thing is to return the house. Grandma wouldn't want the family divided. Think about your parents. Not one person asked what Grandma herself had wanted. Instead, they expected me to erase her final decision simply because it made my parents unhappy. That afternoon, Mom called. We're all meeting at your Aunt Karen's house in an hour. I'm not coming if this is another argument. It isn't an argument, she replied coldly. It's your opportunity to fix what you've done. Before I could answer, she hung up. The living room was already crowded when I arrived. My parents sat together on one couch while several aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the remaining chairs. No one offered me a seat. The silence felt deliberate. Mom stood first. I'm glad you came. I came because I don't want Grandma's memory turned into another fight. Then, this will be simple. She pulled a folder from the coffee table. I've already had a deed prepared. I frowned. What? You'll sign the house over today. Several relatives nodded. It's the only way to keep peace. Your parents deserve it. Think about the family. For years, I would have given in just to end the tension. Grandma used to tell me that was my biggest weakness. I finally understood what she meant. I looked around the room. Did any of you ask why Grandma made this decision? No one answered. Mom slid the papers toward me. Sign them. I slowly pushed the folder back across the table. No. The room erupted. You're unbelievable. How can you do this? After everything your parents have done for you? Mom's voice rose above everyone else's. So you're choosing a house over your own family? I met her eyes without looking away. No. I'm choosing to respect Grandma's final wishes. The front door suddenly opened. Every conversation stopped. Mr. Lawson walked into the room carrying a locked leather portfolio. I apologize for interrupting, he said calmly. But Eleanor instructed me to attend personally if anyone attempted to pressure Natalie into surrendering the property. No one spoke. He placed the portfolio on the coffee table. Then he removed a large sealed file. Across the front, written in Grandma Eleanor's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Open only if Natalie is asked to give away my house." No one moved. The only sound in the room was the slow click of Mr. Lawson releasing the brass locks on the portfolio. Mom folded her arms. This is ridiculous. Just open it. I intend to, Mr. Lawson replied. Mrs. Carter left very specific instructions. He carefully broke the seal on the file. Inside were several neatly organized folders, each labeled in Grandma's handwriting. Medical appointments, estate meetings, personal notes, attorney correspondence. He removed the first bundle. These are Eleanor Carter's dated journal entries. Mom's confidence faltered for the first time. Those are private. They became part of the estate file by Eleanor's written authorization. Mr. Lawson adjusted his glasses and began reading. March 18th. Diane and Richard came again today. They were not here to see how I was feeling. They wanted me to sign the house over immediately. Natalie was at the pharmacy picking up my medication. I refused. A heavy silence settled over the room. Mr. Lawson turned another page. April 9th. Richard said selling the house would make everything easier. I asked easier for whom. Neither answered. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. It wasn't like that. Mr. Lawson continued without acknowledging him. May 2nd. Natalie spent another evening repairing the porch railing. She never asks me for anything. Diane only asks about paperwork. I felt every pair of eyes in the room slowly turning toward my parents. Mom forced a laugh. Eleanor was old. She misunderstood conversations. Mr. Lawson calmly opened another folder. This isn't based solely on Eleanor's memory. He laid several documents across the coffee table. These are my contemporaneous legal notes from every estate meeting. Each page was dated. Each summarized exactly who attended. Each recorded that Eleanor repeatedly refused requests to transfer ownership of the house before her death. Then he produced signed meeting confirmations. Eleanor instructed me to document every discussion involving the property after she became concerned someone might challenge her wishes. Uncle Stephen leaned forward. So, she expected this? Yes. Mr. Lawson nodded. Months before her passing, Dad rubbed both hands across his face. We only wanted to protect family property. You wanted control, Melissa said quietly from across the room. Nobody interrupted her. Mom immediately pointed toward me. She manipulated all of this. Natalie was with Mom every day. I was, I answered, my voice steady. Because someone had to be. The room fell silent again. Mr. Lawson opened the final folder. There is also documentation showing who actually provided Eleanor's care. He passed around copies of appointment logs, caregiver schedules, pharmacy receipts, grocery deliveries, and mileage records. Nearly every page had my name on it. Mom's name appeared only a handful of times. Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable looks. Aunt Karen slowly lowered the papers into her lap. I honestly didn't know. Neither had most of them. For 2 years, my parents had allowed everyone to believe they were handling Grandma's care, while I quietly did the work. Now the evidence sat in front of the entire family. The story they had told was falling apart one document at a time. Mr. Lawson closed the folders and looked around the room. Eleanor anticipated that today's discussion might happen. He reached back into the leather portfolio and removed one final envelope. It was smaller than the others. Across the front, Grandma had written just one sentence. Everyone must hear this together. Mr. Lawson looked up. There's one final item Mrs. Carter asked everyone to hear together. Mr. Lawson held the envelope carefully, almost reverently. I was instructed not to play this unless everyone named in these documents was present. He looked around the room. Everyone is here. He removed a small flash drive from the envelope and plugged it into a portable speaker he had brought with him. A soft crackle filled the room. Then I heard the voice I had spent the last week wishing I could hear one more time. Well, Grandma Eleanor said with a gentle laugh, if you're listening to this, then I was right. No one moved. I hope I wasn't right, she continued, because it means Natalie has been asked to give away my house. Mom's face lost what little color it still had. Grandma continued speaking with the same calm certainty she had always carried. I want everyone to understand something very clearly. Natalie never once asked me for this house. She paused. In fact, every time I mentioned it, she told me to spend my money on myself instead. I covered my mouth as tears filled my eyes. Grandma's voice carried me back to countless evenings in her kitchen, where she insisted on making tea, even when she was too tired to stand. I watched Natalie rearrange her work schedule to take me to chemotherapy. I watched her sleep in the chair beside my bed when the pain became unbearable. I watched her repair this old house one weekend at a time because she said she wanted me to feel safe living here. Her voice softened. She never asked for payment. She never expected a reward. The room was completely silent. Then Grandma's tone changed. But Diane and Richard visited for a different reason. Dad closed his eyes. They repeatedly asked me to transfer ownership before I died. They told me the house would be easier to sell if everything was arranged early. She sighed. They never realized that every conversation convinced me to protect Natalie even more. Mom suddenly stood. This recording proves nothing. Mr. Lawson calmly replied, Please let it finish, Grandma continued. I instructed my attorney to strengthen every legal document because I believed there would be pressure placed on Natalie after I was gone. A faint laugh escaped the speaker. Diane, if you're angry right now, it means you proved me correct. Several relatives lowered their heads. Others looked directly at my parents with expressions I had never seen before. Grandma spoke one final time. This house isn't a prize. It isn't repayment. It is my thank you. I am leaving it to the person who treated me like family every single day, not only when there was something to inherit. The recording ended. No one spoke. The silence lasted nearly a full minute. Finally, Aunt Karen stood and walked toward me. I'm sorry, Natalie. Her voice trembled. I believed what I was told. Uncle Stephen nodded. So did I. One by one, relatives who had spent the previous day urging me to surrender the house quietly apologized. None of them could deny what they had just heard. Dad remained seated, staring at the floor. I should have stopped this, he finally admitted. I knew your mother wanted the house, and I kept telling myself things would work out. I looked at him for several seconds. You watched her lock me out of Grandma's memorial. He couldn't answer. There wasn't an excuse big enough. Mom, however, refused to let go. This family is turning against me because of one recording? Mr. Lawson slid the will, supporting documents, and legal certifications back into their folders. No, Mrs. Carter. They're reacting to years of documented evidence. He folded his hands. The estate plan is legally airtight. Eleanor anticipated every foreseeable challenge. Contesting this will would almost certainly fail, and the estate could seek reimbursement for unnecessary legal costs. For the first time since this nightmare began, Mom had nothing left to argue. She grabbed her purse. This isn't over. No, Melissa said quietly from behind her. It is. Mom looked around the room, waiting for someone to support her. No one did. She walked out without another word. Dad hesitated before following her. At the doorway, he looked back at me. I'm sorry. It was the first apology I had ever heard from him. It was also years too late. Over the following weeks, the estate transferred ownership exactly as Grandma intended. There was no lawsuit, no successful challenge. The relatives who had doubted me slowly reached out, not because the house had changed my value, but because the truth had changed what they believed. As for my parents, they stopped trying to convince me to surrender the property. They had lost more than the house. They had lost the trust of the family they claimed they were trying to protect. A month later, I unlocked the front door with my own key. The house still smelled faintly of lavender and the cinnamon cookies Grandma baked every Sunday. I walked into the backyard, carrying the same white lilies I had never been allowed to place beside her memorial photograph. This time, I laid them beneath the old maple tree she loved to sit under every summer. Then I spent the afternoon restoring the flower beds we had planted together, exactly as she had always imagined. Inside the living room, I placed the speaker containing Grandma's final message on the bookshelf. Not because I needed to replay it every day, but because I never wanted to forget why she left me this home. It wasn't about the property. It was about knowing that someone had seen every sacrifice I made, even when no one else did. As I locked Grandma's front door that evening, I realized my parents had kept me out of her memorial, but they could never keep me out of the home she had already chosen for me.